I never should have had you. My mother said it at my sister's engagement party. Her voice was calm. She did not whisper. 300 guests moved through the ballroom around us. She said it the way someone might point out a smudge on the tablecloth. Quiet. Final. My father took a sip of champagne and walked over to congratulate the caterer. He did not look back. I walked to the restroom, I locked the stall, I pressed my back against the metal door and breathed. Then I opened my email and typed one word. Activate. The subject line read Westbrook High School Alumni of the Year Final Confirmation. 300 people in that ballroom. My grandmother's portrait above the head table, her silver hair and steady gaze holding the room the way she always had, even from a canvas, 7 years after we buried her. The silver nameplate on the podium still carried her name. 3 months from that night, it would carry mine. She had the sense to leave before things became truly unbearable. But let me take you back. My name is Naomi Cross. I am 32 years old. For 7 years, I ran the daily operations of my grandmother's charitable foundation. I wrote the grant applications and the annual reports. I built the scholarship program from 41 students in year 1 to 243 by year 7. I showed up to every board meeting, every document prepared, every number verified, without ever being given the director title, without my name on a single official record. The credit went somewhere else every single time, and I kept showing up anyway. Tonight, that was about to end. In 45 minutes, the board would vote on permanent leadership. My mother had been building toward that vote for 7 years. She was at the front of the ballroom accepting congratulations she had not earned yet, believing completely that it was already settled. She had not looked in the right direction. I stared at my grandmother's silver nameplate on the podium and waited for the moment she would have no choice but to say my name. I slipped my hand into my jacket pocket and touched the worn edges of the funeral program. 7 years of silence folded into paper. I would not fold it again. When I made my way back into the ballroom, I did not cross toward my mother. I found space along the outer wall where I could see the full room without being pulled into any part of it, which was exactly where I had spent most of my life in relation to events my mother organized. My mother, Eleanor Cross, was 58 years old and had spent 30 years building a reputation organized entirely around appearances. She sat on 3 nonprofit boards, chaired the country club's charitable giving committee, and moved through rooms the way someone ensures every room receives her correctly. Everyone admired her. She had arranged it that way. What none of them knew was that Eleanor had taken the foundation director role by force. My grandmother, Ruth Cross, had spent her final months filing a formal board resolution with the county clerk, naming me as her successor. Signed in her own hand, notarized, filed under an official case number. It existed. My mother had convinced herself no one would ever find it. When my grandmother died, Eleanor moved quickly. She told the board the resolution reflected poor judgment and should not be treated as binding, that the foundation needed experienced leadership. Half the board had known Eleanor for 20 years. They believed her. I was 25 years old, seated at the far end of a room where no one addressed me. The directorship went to Eleanor. My name disappeared from every official record. There is one thing I have never told anyone. When I was 8, she gave me a worn copy of The Secret Garden with a handwritten note inside the cover. For a while, I believed she was the person who would explain the world to me. I kept it even after I understood. The garden was never meant to hold both of us. The winter after the funeral, my brother Ethan and I went through my grandmother's apartment. In the back of the closet, I found the silver lockbox, the combination lock sealed. When I held it out to him, he went very still. "She gave me the combination," he said. "Wait until Eleanor tries to take something from you in public." He picked it up. "I will hold this until you need it." I did not argue. At the edge of the ballroom that evening, I noticed Mr. Sturster Ashworth, my grandmother's personal attorney for 30 years, standing near the coat check. He held a thick envelope carefully in both hands. He was not introducing himself to anyone. He stood very still and watched the room with the patience of someone who has been waiting a long time for one specific moment. My mother walked past him without a glance. She should have looked. I watched her pass him, and I knew, with a certainty that settled in my chest like stone, that she had already lost. She just did not know it yet. I thought about that lockbox as I stood against the wall. It brought me back to the beginning, when I first understood what kind of family I was actually in. I was 12 years old when I won my school's regional spelling bee. The drive home afterward was quiet, which I had learned by then was a warning. My mother said nothing until we were in the kitchen with her tea prepared and her posture arranged into something that resembled patience. "You embarrass me in front of the PTA," she said. She's running up there like that, making a spectacle. She picked up my trophy from the counter and dropped it in the kitchen trash can. The sound it made at the bottom was the sound of something hollow, landing on something harder than it expected. I went to bed. At 2 in the morning, I got up and fished the trophy out of the trash and hid it under my bed in the back corner where the light did not reach. It stayed there until I left for college, a constant reminder that my best moments apparently belonged in the garbage. At least, my storage solutions were improving. Then came the college application season. My mother submitted Camille's application to the private university a full week early, with a personal reference letter from a family friend on the admissions board. She forgot to file mine until the deadline had passed. I found out on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, I had taken 2 buses to the public library, printed the state school's forms, and mailed everything myself with the last cash in my wallet, minimum wage savings and maximum paper cuts. But I made the deadline. I got in. I paid for it myself, year by year, in ways that made that education mine in a way nothing my mother arranged ever was. My grandmother's funeral was the hardest. I was 25. The estate attorney read the will in a private room, and before anyone could respond, my mother leaned forward and told him that her mother had been confused near the end, that certain documents did not reflect her real intentions. I watched it happen. I said nothing. When Eleanor turned away from the table, Ethan looked at me from across the room. He did not speak. He just held my gaze for a long moment. I understood that he had been watching too, that he had been counting. I kept the funeral program, the one where my name was missing from the list of people she had survived by. I folded it and put it in my wallet and carried it there for 7 years. Last year, my mother stood at the head of the board table and presented 6 months of my financial work as her own, citing my figures, using my framing, answering questions with answers I had written. She did it smoothly, the way you do something you have rehearsed until the rehearsal is indistinguishable from the real thing. I drove home and sat in my parked car for 20 minutes before I could go inside. Then, I opened a new folder on my computer and started keeping every email she had ever sent me. I stayed because I believed family was supposed to hurt you only so much. I stayed until I understood that some families had no ceiling on what they were willing to take. I reached into my pocket, felt the worn paper of the funeral program, and made a quiet promise to myself. Tonight someone would say my name. I used to believe families had limits. The engagement party was the night I stopped believing that. The venue was the country club my mother had used for every significant family occasion since before I was born. 300 guests, a full catering team, my grandmother's portrait on the wall, the chandeliers my mother once described as the only lighting worth being seen under. Everything designed to communicate that the people in this room were the kind whose celebrations mattered, and whose family stories deserved to be told in rooms like this one. An hour before the formal announcement, my mother pulled me into the prep kitchen off the main corridor. The door had not fully swung shut before she began. "You will stand along the east wall during the announcement," she said, adjusting the clasp on Camille's necklace without looking at me. "Stay there, through the toasts. Do not position yourself near the front. Do not get into the photographs. And do not embarrass us tonight." She said it like a stage direction for furniture placed incorrectly. Camille looked at me from across the kitchen with a small, brief expression of apology. She had grown up knowing how this worked. She had never been asked to stand in a corner. I went back into the ballroom and found the east wall. I watched the board members my mother had personally invited take their seats at the preferred tables. I watched her move through the room with practiced ease, collecting compliments the way other people collect receipts, laughing at exactly the right moments. 3 decades of performance, so consistent she probably believed it herself. She took the podium when the room was at its fullest and most attentive. She began with the family's history, with my grandmother's portrait and the foundation's legacy and what it was meant to represent. She spoke about continuity and vision and the responsibility that came with the cross name. The board members nodded. 300 faces turned toward the stage. And then she said what she had come here to say. I am proud to announce that Camille Cross will be stepping into the role of head of the family foundation, effective immediately. Camille has the grace and intelligence and vision this family has always deserved. She looked directly at me. The daughter who actually matters. She delivered that line like someone accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award for pretending to care. The crowd absorbed it immediately, the applause building from the front tables and moving back through the room. My sister smiled her practiced smile. Board members turned to each other with warm, approving nods. My mother held her gaze on me for one extra beat, long enough to confirm it was intentional, then turned back to the room with a smile that could have lit the chandeliers. I did not move from the east wall. My hands were folded in front of me. Through my jacket pocket, I could feel the worn edges of the folded funeral program, the paper soft from 7 years of being carried. My chest did not shake. My face did not move. I had 32 years of practice at this particular kind of stillness. Then my mother leaned into the microphone and dropped her voice to the register she used when she wanted to sound calm and in control. The formal board vote takes place in 45 minutes. I hope everyone will stay. She found me across the room. Her eyes held mine for one precise moment. 45 minutes. The board vote happens in 45 minutes. I suggest you stay quiet. And then my brother Ethan passed me from the right and bent his head toward mine without slowing his pace. Ethan was 28 years old and had spent most of his life making himself invisible inside our mother's spaces, which had given him an unusual ability to notice what everyone else missed. She hid the resolution, he said, below the level of the conversations around us. I know where it is. He kept walking without stopping or looking back. I had 45 minutes to prove my mother had been lying for 7 years, and my brother had just handed me the thread I had not been able to find on my own. Standing against the east wall with 300 guests still applauding and my mother shaking hands at the podium, I pulled the funeral program from my pocket and held it against my chest. The paper felt warm now. I looked at my grandmother's portrait above the stage. Then I folded the program once more, put it back, and walked toward the coat check. I went back to the restroom. I locked the stall door again. I focused on a fixed point in the tile and breathed until my chest settled. I reached into my jacket pocket and took out the funeral program. 7 years of carrying it had worn the paper completely soft. The cover had faded to near nothing. The interior was still legible. The list of immediate family still clear. My grandmother had survived by 4 people. My mother's name. My sister's name. My father's name. My brother's name. My name was not there. I pressed the program flat against my chest and stood in that locked stall and breathed slowly. The paper was the temperature of the inside of a pocket. It smelled like old ink and the faint floral of my wallet's lining. The creases had started splitting at the center. 7 years of folding that program. At least my origami skills had significantly improved. I went to the sink and looked in the mirror. My hands were shaking with that low, steady tremor that meant my body had processed the situation before my mind caught up. I watched them until the shaking slowed. I stood up straight. I had told myself they were right about me once. Not all the time, but in the quiet hours. that maybe the invisibility was something in me rather than something being done deliberately. I had folded that story up and carried it the same way I carried the program. I put the program back in my pocket. When I walked back into the ballroom, my mother was at the center of a group of board members, her laugh easy and warm, her posture that combination of authority that made people feel honored to be near her. No one watching would have guessed she had told her daughter she never should have been born 40 minutes earlier. 30 years of practice. I gave her that. I crossed the room directly to where Ethan was waiting near the far curtain. "Show me where," I said. I did not cry. I did not ask why. I followed him. Ethan led me past the coat check. I glanced back once. My mother was still laughing with the board members. She did not see us leave. Ethan led me past the coat check and through the service corridor, where the catering team moved dessert trays in precise lines, and into a storage alcove at the far end of the building, where the venue kept folded banquet chairs and spare tablecloths and everything a room needs that guests are not supposed to see. He reached behind the second row of chairs. He pulled out the silver lockbox. 7 years he had been holding on to it. Small and heavy and patient in his hands. "She gave me the combination before she died," Ethan said, keeping his voice below the sounds from the corridor outside. "She told me you would need it when Eleanor tried to erase you publicly. She used that word. Publicly. She said to wait until Eleanor was about to win something in a room full of witnesses. She was very precise about those conditions. She knew Eleanor would eventually go too far. She spent the last year of her life making sure it would not go unpunished when she did." He handed me a folded slip of paper in my grandmother's handwriting. Her letters looked exactly as they always had, careful and deliberate, like someone who believed that the way you formed things said something about your intentions. I opened the box. Inside was a manila envelope of the heavy kind used for documents meant to survive. Inside the envelope was a 2-page resolution on paper, slightly yellowed at the corners, but completely legible throughout. Signed in my grandmother's own hand across the bottom of the second page, notarized with a seal that had faded but remained present, naming Naomi Cross as foundation director and successor. At the bottom of the page, in different ink added separately, was a brief handwritten note. There was also a note on my grandmother's personal stationery. 3 lines, written in the hand I had known since I could read. Careful. Deliberate. The same hand that had signed the resolution. Eleanor will lie. This document is filed with the county clerk. Case number 2019-100, 50842. If the stamp looks faded, call the clerk's office. It is in their system. The notary stamp was faded. I ran my thumb over it. She had anticipated even this. "The clerk's office is closed tonight," I said. "I know," Ethan said. He was already looking at his phone. "Priya works in the county records office. She came tonight as one of the catering coordinator's guests. She is in the main room right now." He sent a message. We stood among the folded chairs in the dim alcove and waited. The sounds from the ballroom traveled through the wall in that reduced, flattened way, a room sounds from the room beside it, a current of noise without specific meaning. 45 minutes. The board vote happens in 45 minutes. I suggest you stay quiet. 20 minutes of those were already gone. Priya arrived 4 minutes later. She moved with the focused economy of someone who has already decided what she is going to do. Ethan showed her the case number. She pulled up the county's digital records portal on her phone and typed it in. The screen populated. "All here," she said. "Filing date, notary log, electronic seal." She turned the screen toward me. "Look at the witness line." The signature of Eleanor Cross appeared on the witness line. My mother had been present at the filing. She had signed as official witness to my grandmother's resolution. She had known the document existed from the moment of its creation because she had signed her own name to confirm it. Then she had spent 7 years telling the board It reflected confused thinking, that no one should take it seriously, that it simply did not exist. She had buried a document she had personally attested to with her own signature. I almost laughed. She had signed her name to the very thing she spent 7 years hiding. That level of certainty is only possible if you are completely sure no one will ever look. She was sure. She had always been sure. That was the problem with Eleanor. Certainty and arrogance look identical from the inside. Priya was printing the notary log through a compact wireless printer she kept in her bag for field verification work. The county seal printed clearly at the top. Every field matched the original resolution exactly. She handed me the copy with the calm efficiency of someone who treats document verification as a routine part of any evening. Which, to her great credit, it clearly was. My phone buzzed. A second email from Westbrook High arrived from the principal directly, confirming tonight's alumni presentation. I had submitted the nomination 4 months earlier, the week I first learned my mother intended to formally replace me at the foundation. The selection had come 3 weeks ago. I had told no one in my family. I had 3 things now from 2 completely separate and unconnected sources. The original resolution in my grandmother's handwriting. The county's digital notary log, carrying my mother's own signature as witness to the filing. The alumni recognition from an institution with no connection to the foundation, no knowledge of tonight's vote, and no reason to confirm anything except what their own record showed was true. I walked back into the ballroom carrying the lockbox under my arm. My mother saw me the moment I came through the door. Her eyes went directly to the lockbox with the specific recognition of someone confronting an object they have spent years telling themselves was gone. Her expression moved through recognition, recalculation, and practiced recovery in under 2 seconds. Her hands tightened on her wineglass until the knuckles went briefly pale before she turned back to the board chair with a light laugh. Remarkable at recovery. I had spent my whole life watching her do it. I crossed the room, took my seat at the head table, and set the lockbox in plain sight beside my water glass. I said nothing to anyone who looked at it. I held my mother's gaze across the table for 3 steady seconds and did not look away first. The lockbox sat between us, small and silver and patient. The board was about to vote. My mother thought she had won. She had no idea what was walking toward her from every direction at once. My mother took the podium at exactly the moment she had planned. She thanked the guests and the board and spoke about legacy and the next chapter of leadership. It was a well-constructed speech. She had always been good at those. Then she formally called for the board vote. I stood up. I walked to the head table. I placed the lockbox before him. I opened it. The documents came out. Mr. Ashworth stepped forward. He placed his envelope beside them. The board chair reached for both. The room went quiet the way it does when something unexpected has happened, and 300 people are waiting to understand what they are witnessing. That is a fake. My mother's voice was flat and controlled, her boardroom voice, the one she had spent 30 years perfecting. My mother was confused in her final months. She did not understand what she was signing. That document has no legal standing. She said it exactly as she had rehearsed it. I could hear the preparation in how ready it was. Mr. Ashworth walked to the board chair and placed the thick envelope on the table with both hands, carefully, the way you place something you have been trusted to carry and have not dropped. The county clerk's office sent me a certified copy this morning, he said. I have their sworn statement from 2019. The digital notary log matches the original filing in every detail. The board chair unfolded the first document. The paper crackled as it opened, dry and official in the quiet of that ballroom. He read each line carefully, his voice unhurried. Case number 2019-105-0842. Filed March 14, 2019. Notarized with electronic seal. The signature of Eleanor Cross appears on the witness line. He set the document down. The air conditioning hummed faintly in the overhead vents. Somewhere behind me a chair shifted against the marble floor, and the sound of its legs moving carried clearly across the room. My mother's hand went to the podium. Actually, the board has a record, and I have the signature. The color left her face, the way color leaves something that has been slowly drained of what kept it bright, steadily and without any possibility of going back. Her hand pressed flat against the podium surface, her full weight shifting into it. Her wine glass tipped from where she had set it and fell, and shattered on the marble floor, the sound of it sharp and clean and audible in every corner of the room. She opened her mouth. Her jaw moved. No sound came out. It was the first time in my life I had seen her completely speechless. I almost wished I had thought to bring a camera. Before she could recover, the principal of Westbrook High stepped toward the secondary microphone near the edge of the stage. Miss Caldwell had driven 40 minutes to be here and had waited patiently in the side hall through the entire dinner for this one moment. "We also have a presentation this evening," she said. Naomi Cross, Alumni of the Year. 243 students reached through her scholarship program over 7 years of quiet and consistent service. Tonight, we finally say her name out loud. The applause from the audience side of the room began before the last sentence finished. My mother's head turned from the principal to me and back. "That is not my daughter," she said. Louder than intended. Loud enough for the front 4 tables to catch it clearly. "My daughter is Camille." Nobody at those tables had asked. Priya stepped forward from near the service entrance and handed the board chair the printed notary log with the county seal at the top. He accepted it without looking away from the documents already in his hands. "Mr. Prass." Ashworth turned to look at my mother. His voice was quiet, the voice of someone who has been holding something carefully for a very long time and has finally been given permission to set it down. "I saw what you did at the funeral. I stayed silent because your mother asked me to wait. But she prepared for this 7 years ago. Comment the word SEEN below if you believe some people never truly see you until it is already too late." The board chair looked at my mother. Then he looked at me. "The foundation has a director," he said, "and her name is Naomi." The silver nameplate on the podium glinted under the chandelier light. It still bore my grandmother's name, but I knew, in that moment, that it would not be for much longer. The board voted unanimously to reinstate the original resolution that same Thursday evening, and in the days that followed, working through Mr. Ashworth and the county clerk's office and the foundation's own legal counsel, every account, every donor contract, every active grant approval, every piece of operational authority, and every legal record connected to the Eleanor Cross Family Charitable Foundation was transferred quietly and officially into my name, processed through the proper channels with the documentation my grandmother had prepared 7 years before, the way things that have always legally belonged to someone tend to arrive once the person standing between them and their rightful owner no longer has the standing to remain. My mother resigned from every committee and board she had served on within the following week, citing personal reasons in the letters she sent to each organization, and 3 weeks after that evening, the country club mailed a formal letter to her home requesting the return of her platinum membership key along with any guest passes issued in her name, the kind of correspondence that includes no explanation or invitation to respond, because everyone involved already understood exactly why it was being sent, and what it meant for the life she had spent 30 years building around the perception of belonging in that particular room. I stood beneath my grandmother's portrait at the next annual gala, in the same ballroom with the same chandelier light and the same marble floor and the same silver frame, holding the same steady gaze that had watched over every Cross family occasion for 3 decades, and for the first time in 7 years, in front of 243 scholarship students and their families and the board members who had made it official, and every guest who had been there the night it changed. The silver nameplate on the podium carried my name. If you have ever done the invisible work, kept the records, prepared the documents, and watched someone else stand at the podium and receive what was rightfully yours, you already know that endurance is not the same as peace, and staying is not the same as belonging. When the person who caused the deepest damage in your life is also the same person who once stayed up through the night, reading to you until your fever broke, what do you owe them when the moment finally comes to choose? If this story found something real in you, there are more where this came from, and I would be honored to have you along for them. Some names just take longer to be said out loud,